Today on Lightning Bugs.
And a big thing is not having the fear of failure. Like I look back at when I started and think, why was I so brave?
Or you were dumb.
Like you would do something new, and then the next week you'd be up on stage doing something new again. And all these wizened old veterans who are saying like, why don't you just do the stuff you did last week? And you do it again, and it gets better the more you do it. But then I would see them doing the same material 5 years later. They're still doing the same 20-minute set.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be those people. And yet as I got older, I realized you keep dipping into the bag of tricks more often. And you soon realize, it's because of the fear of when I'm younger, it doesn't matter if I have a bad gig. No one knows who I am. They're not coming to see me. I'm just another generic face on the bill. But once you have a profile, you want, when you turn up...
Expectations.
Yeah. Even before you step down.
Yeah.
So the idea that, I'll just try something new, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, is the big fear that stops you from taking that next step.
Hi, if you're enjoying listening to Lightning Bugs, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot. Today's guest is Rove McManus, an award-winning comedian, television and radio presenter, producer, and media personality. He also happens to own a big production company. I got to record this episode in person with Rove, a rare and sacred occasion in these days. Here's our conversation with Rove. 1, 2.
How much do you love a sound check?
I love sound checks.
Sound checks are great.
Yeah, sound checks are good.
I am perfectly fine with standing in front of an empty theater just to come out. I don't really need to do sound checks. I always get booked to do sound checks when really all I'm going to be doing is talking. There's no music or anything else involved. And if I come out talking too loud in the first couple of minutes, you can just drop it back a bit, but they always book a sound check. And I just find myself talking for much longer than they require me to once I have a live microphone.
Because you're just so into it.
I just really enjoy the sound of my own voice through a microphone.
Amplified.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
without pesky people getting in the way.
No, you've got the mic.
Every joke is amazing in my head.
As a musician, well, I haven't really done sound checks in years because I carry my crew. They pretty much know what I'm going to do and know where my voice sits and everything. So the first time I had to do sound checks again was doing my book tour.
Oh.
And it's like, you're saying you get a sound check booked. I was like looking at my schedule going, I got to go to this shit? Like, yeah.
What are you doing a sound check?
What am I doing? You're just talking to your mic. Can't somebody else do that? I mean, we all got voice. Like, I just kind of...
And you're never going to project, perform the same as when, there's a live crowd and you're in the moment. So you come out and do a sound check. Yeah, I'll be probably somewhere around here. I'll say, hey, thanks everybody for coming. And then in the first 5 seconds, you're like, yes! Sydney!
That's right. Yeah, you go all Howard Dean on it. Did you ever hear that? I don't know if the politics of this made it to Australia, but Howard Dean screaming into his mic?
No.
Apparently that was the moment that he lost the primary for a Democratic candidate for president in the U.S. And he got really excited on his mic, but there's a huge crowd, and he's like, yeah, we're going to take it all the way, yeah. And that went viral, and he looked like a nutcase.
Oh, sure.
Because you couldn't hear any of the audience, which is why my biggest pet peeve is board tapes.
Yes.
Board tapes are scary for a musician.
Yeah.
Because it's like the voice is going to be the loudest thing on it. It's going to be bone dry. At the end of the song, whatever person is in the front row, forget the other 10,000 people.
It's a big problem in the comedy business when they do live recordings, that all you get is the audience coming through the microphone that the performer's using. Any television show that I do or have done, one of the first questions, because I like to talk to the audience before a show or during commercial breaks, and I will always say, does anybody have any questions? And one of the questions people have is, why are there microphones above the audience?
Really?
And the answer is, well, because we need to hear you laugh. We're all wearing microphones. Yeah. Whether you can see it or not, we have the little clip-on lapels.
Tell us the FBI.
Yeah. And we are picking up everything you say during the break. So if you don't like something and you're shit-canning us, We know. And then you'll be asked to leave.
Why are they in the toilets? That's the real question. And the camera.
It's important ambient sound. We need to know. Do you have a showbiz question that you have? Like
What am I asked?
As you get further into the business, how you can't do like a 5-hour show. Something's got to go at some point.
Most fans of music have real specific questions about songs. So they'll be very specific. And unlike comedy, where your material is constantly changing, you just absorb new material in as a small percentage, but the old stuff becomes more and more legendary. So people want to know, what was the sound of that telephone ringing on that song? Or what did you mean when you said this? But almost never anything like general, except for journalists. The first question will be, you're playing next week, what can the audience expect?
That's great, isn't it?
I think that's a good question.
I haven't done my homework.
It's like, I don't know.
Tell us about the show.
Yeah, I'm going to get out of, what can I expect? I'm going to get on one of those pogo stick. I'm going to jump around a pogo stick. There's going to be dancers on stage. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I made up some songs. I'm going to play them.
Yeah. Have a guess. It may require me with a piano singing songs that I have written.
I don't think I've ever been a dick to an interviewer as many times as I've wanted to be. But this is the thing, like, and this is what I'm actually really interested in, getting a lesson on interviewing.
Oh,
that's how I'm kind of viewing this. Like every one of these, and it's like, this is not my day job, but it is your day job.
Yes,
and we're
it
not
is.
like sitting at a piano playing a duet or anything, in which case it would feel very different for me, right? I just looked up before you came, and in 2018,
yes,
there were 500,000 podcasts on Apple iTunes. As of last month, 1.5 million.
Wow.
So, not to point out how insignificant this conversation is, but more to say that now everyone is doing that, which is like in music, like everyone can record in their living room or their basement because they have a multi-track recorder on their iPhone or their iPad even. So I guess what I'm thinking is, you must be looking at this because you've done so many things that when I do my introduction, I don't even know where I'm going to start.
Yeah.
You've actually done more things than anyone that I've talked to so far. Everyone I've talked to does one or two things over and over again, but you've done a lot of shit.
Yeah, right.
But interviewing became part of it at some point.
Yes.
Like you were on stage and you were writing and stuff early, but when did you realize, oh shit, I have to learn how to interview, or did that ever happen?
So it started for me with doing stand-up, and I loved comedy anyway, but I never really saw myself, and don't necessarily still see myself as a stand-up. I love doing it. I feel it's not the thing that comes naturally to me. I have to work at it. And in the last 12 months, I feel like, well, I would like to think that I've taken the next step you need to take with my craft, as far as working on new things and getting out there and performing it.
When you say next step, you mean just rolling out new stuff, or actually evolving into a new...
Yeah, a bit of evolving a little bit. So I feel like I've taken that next step of, not just resting on the same old stuff, wanting to say something new, and getting out there and doing it. And a big thing is not having the fear of failure. Like I look back at when I started and think, why was I so brave?
Or you're dumb.
Like you would do something new, and then the next week you'd be up on stage doing something new again. And all these wizened old veterans who are saying like, why don't you just do the stuff you did last week? And you do it again, and it gets better the more you do it. But then I would see them doing the same material 5 years later. They're still doing the same 20-minute set.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be those people. And yet as I got older, I realized you keep dipping into the bag of tricks more often. And you soon realize, it's because of the fear of, when I'm younger, it doesn't matter if I have a bad gig. No one knows who I am. They're not coming to see me. I'm just another generic face on the bill. But once you have a profile, you want, when you turn up... Expectation.
Yeah.
Even before you stepped out.
Yeah.
So the idea that, I'll just try something new, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, is the big fear that stops you from taking that next step.
And you know better.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you know more what sucks now. That sucks.
And
That's
more
hard.
importantly, just trusting that you know how to tell a joke. You know how to write a joke and you know how to tell a joke, especially for yourself. So just do it and trust that the audience gives you a level of leniency that most other people get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you do it the right way, you'll be fine. So anyway, when I started out doing stand-up comedy. I wanted to do something. I enjoyed the craft, the medium of television and comedy on television, but I didn't quite know where that fit was for me. And then I was doing stand-up in a club, and someone came who was a talent scout for a very, very small budget community public access television program, and said, "Can you come and do a stand-up spot on our pilot for this show we're doing?" And then the day before, they said, "Oh, and we also want you, can you write something to perform with the host at the end of the show, like a piece about what's been happening in the news?" And so my stand-up spot went well, and the bit that I did with the host afterwards worked well. And then I got a call saying, "Hey, the pilot was really well received. We really enjoyed the pilot. We weren't really big on the host, but we really liked you. Do you want to host it?" So next thing I know, I'm doing a talk show at the age of what would have been like 24 for what would have been, I would have been lucky if 1,000 people saw that show.
And that was here in
that was
Perth.
it was in Melbourne.
Okay.
And that was the start of it for me. So I did 3 years of that. And then
community access.
Yeah. And was spotted by the #1 network in the country who said, "Come and do it in front of lots of people."
So I had gotten the impression, even stalking you on the internet, which I'd never done until a couple days ago, really. Like I never really I don't go to my friends' Wikipedia pages, because I know what mine looks like. and it's still I got more of the impression that you were doing a lot of stand-up at that time.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I started in Perth, so I was 21 and did a few years of that, and then moved. Like within 3 years, I'd moved to Melbourne because that's what you did. That was where you went to make it, in quotes.
This is Nick. Hit it, Nick.
Quick question about creativity, specifically, how an environment influences that creativity. How much do you find normally your setting, your location, your physical environment influences that process for you? Are there certain, areas, maybe rooms of a house or favorite spots to go to that sort of jumpstart that process for you?
Well, several things come to mind. One is a longer conversation, which I seem to have sometimes. It's part of the way I think. I believe that we do collaborate with our environment, and I think I've been heard to say that a few times. But I think what I mean by that is maybe a little different than what you're saying. An environment, your physical environment, it changes what you do. I mean, even a mistake. If you make a mistake, the environment of that mistake that you're living with it has collaborated with you. Possibly, it changes the trajectory of where your thoughts are going. If you're in a cold room and you're pacing a lot, that's going to change it. All these things you're never just the sole creator of what you do. And I believe that. I believe that we're creating with our environment, which could be my environment. I have 10 fingers. My hands are shaped like most people's hands. Thank God. But I don't want them to have so much say over my song. So I take them out of the environment often when I begin a song because I don't want to put my hands down in the same shape as everyone else does and suddenly be led around rather than being led around by my imagination. A lot of times I'm working on something, I'm deep into a song, something I'm working on, and it's just something like I hop in the shower and then suddenly all these things come to mind, or I walk. Usually it's moving, walking. And I find that it works that way in the studio sometimes too with a vocal take. Often I like to use a handheld microphone because I can go from one place in the studio to the next as I feel like I've sucked all the energy out of one corner, or I now associate that corner with bad takes. I kneel to the floor sometimes. I'll walk around the room. I'll stand on a chair. That's something that I've done a lot. And that's really similar to what you're talking about. I don't have any go-to environments, but I do try to shift it up. And I find that my ideas sometimes solidify or come about in the most inopportune times. Shower, traffic light, while I'd rather be sleeping, stuff like that. I hope that's of some help. The question made me think. That's good. Thanks, Nick. Bye. Well, I mean, it seems like there's a little more of a culture of that here. I don't know that as a fact, but it seems like there are more people that try their hand at stand-up. Like kind of amateur, like just go up on the stage and tell jokes. So
I think I was around the time of, I wasn't by any means a trailblazer, but I was in the wake of a group that came through that were like a generation, I would say, we're all within 5 years of each other, where it became, you can make a living out of this and not just working clubs all your life.
And like radio and stuff, getting a radio, Triple J.
People are getting picked up for television roles. Like you can see people on TV who aren't just a host, they're a comedian hosting a show, or they're not just a DJ, they're a comedian who's hosting a radio program. And there were genuine outlets for people, especially younger people like me at the time, to get out there and be a professional comedian.
Yeah.
And we were very fortunate because now I think there's a logjam. Now this idea I want to be a comedian because I can make money out of it and I can become famous or get a job on television or radio or in film or whatever. I think now there's just too many. But
that makes sense.
For a while there, it was just, I just want to tell jokes. Yeah, and then that led to something else. I feel the most for that 20-year-old me, whoever that is now, that person who is right on the cusp of taking that step to really, blossom as a performer. And suddenly everything gets yanked out from under you.
Oh, my God, yes.
And any momentum you had is gone. The idea that you were the next big thing is now, well, we'll put that to one side. And when everything starts up again, chances are we've forgotten about you because there may be someone else who's come through.
And you're referring to the pandemic, what that's done to kids. Yeah.
Exactly. Like the idea that, you can't just get up and perform. Or maybe there was someone, like I had deals that fell through for shows.
Yeah.
I lost 6 months worth of work in a day.
Yeah.
But I know when things start back up again, if I pick up the phone, someone will answer it. And same thing, I will get offers for things, if they're looking for someone. But if you were that younger face that was just trying to get through and maybe, there was a deal that was about to be done and they'll say, well, we'll come back to that.
It could be devastating.
Now to be like, we're not sure if that'll happen again.
But when you put yourself back in the age again and you think, well, at that age you were, like you're saying, you're writing new material for each show. Ambitious, even though you didn't read it that way, you just have so much energy. I see the musical equivalence, and that's my first thought is like, Christ, what I do now, like as much as I had invested in my music and I was trying to get somewhere, it's already just getting pushed down. Just circumstances do it to you. It's a very difficult business. What would I have done? And then as I go online, I see people making incredible careers online in a way that I never thought about. One example would be Corey Wong of Wolfbeck. It looks like he's making television shows. I mean, I don't know how he's doing this in his house, but the music is stunning. It's done really well. And I thought, okay, well, I moved a piano from show to show. That's what I did with all my crazy youthful energy. If someone had locked me down, no, I'd have a TV set in, I would be doing something different. So I do think, even though I feel badly for them, I still can see that a young man or a young woman who is really ambitious, you're not going to stop them.
Well, it's like, I guess I'm looking at it through the prism of what I know.
You know, yeah.
And here's me saying, well, what if they had a television program and that television program is finished?
Yeah.
And then there could be 20-year-olds who are going, who even watches television anymore?
That's right.
Granddad. Like, no, we've been successfully
pick up the phone book and call me.
Yes, here's me referencing it. They'll pick up my telegraph. But yeah, you're right. There's also people who are generating their own work without needing any kind of...
They're figuring it out.
Yeah.
They're figuring it out. You and I figured it out with a different set of circumstances, and we're incredibly fortunate, probably very similar, you're a little after me, but it's possible that, you could still call that the same generation still. Yeah, we had a lot of advantages.
Yeah.
Big money in entertainment.
Yeah.
Such big money in entertainment. Someone gives you a television show like you had, like the first one when I met you in 2000, I guess. Yeah, that's a lot of money on this set.
Yeah, and that was also, the time before was there was just a lot of money in the business anyway. Like around the 80s, you hear about how there was just talent would get everything paid for.
Yeah.
But there wasn't necessarily the job security. What I had was kind of that next wave of networks as a budget saving measure were outsourcing. So they weren't making things in-house. They would pay someone to make it for them. And so they weren't bearing any of the costs week to week. And that's where I came in when I started, was this idea of going into my first meeting and they said, what do you want? And I didn't really know. I just wanted to make a show that people could see. That was really it.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm sitting there with my manager before we're going into this meeting, and he said, neither of us have been in this situation before. And we're both saying, so what do we ask for?
Was he a real manager?
Yeah. But he managed stand-up comedians.
Okay, gotcha. I understand.
So the idea of someone and he looked after talent that had worked on television and gained
Curious,
profiles.
are you with the same manager?
Yes, indeed.
Awesome.
And now he has his own production arm and
Amazing.
A string of talent that he has to work with. But at the time, this was the first chance to sort of go in with the ability to make your own program. And the fact that I was getting paid, and it didn't really matter how much, it was always going to be amazing to me. And getting to do the show that I wanted to do with more people watching it, I was happy. So then it became, well, the only thing I want is to be able to say no to something, so that then the show becomes the show I want it to be. And that was the only deal point we brought to the table.
Oh, interesting.
When they said, what do you want? So, to say, well, I want to get paid. Of course they were going to do that.
Right.
And I want to make an actual TV show. Well, of course they're going to do that. So then it became, I want the ability to say no.
Right.
So that if the idea of, hey, you're going to host in a duck suit next week, or, you're doing, something ridiculous that you're not happy about, I just wanted to say, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the response from the network was, well, if you want to do that, then you're going to have to produce it yourself. And so then off I went and registered a production company name and put myself, and then next thing you know, we're up and running. But there was no plans to build it into anything.
See, I love stories like that because, essentially this is, the reason I'm out here doing this is creativity. It's basically about creativity. And I've always fascinated with what kind of mindset we have to be in to create a thing, how much is an accident, how much is skill, and because everyone does something creative, I think. Most people. The human species would still be in the middle of the food chain getting eaten by bears if we weren't creative. And yet, when I go to a lobby for arts and arts education back in the States, I can really see that creativity and ideas really takes a back seat to everything, which is the reason we're here. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, I have two things now as a bad interviewer, and I'm enjoying it. I love the freedom of being a bad interviewer, by the way.
Well, this is the thing, to get to your interview point,
yes,
I guess.
Because I was going to say, would you normally rope your interviewee back to the question, which was kind of like about interviewing and about how you acquired the skill.
Yes.
And then you went off on stuff that was more interesting.
Well, so here's the deal. This is where I think the difference between, like you're saying, there's all these podcasts and people that are talking to other people. And what is the difference between an interviewer and someone who's just talking? Yeah. In the same way that I'm sure that there are journalists out there who have studied and got an actual degree, who sit there bristling at the idea of someone being labeled a journalist because they have a blog, or a Twitter feed where they talk about, the review of the latest Marvel film or something. But there are plenty of people. I still feel, to me, the art of the interview is the art of conversation. It's about the way I always like to describe it. For me, is you have all the toys in front of you, but then it's up to you to work out how you play with them.
Okay.
So that means having researched your guest.
Right.
So I would normally have gotten like pages and pages of just biography, boring biography, highlighted the bits that interested me. Then I would sit down with a producer and she and I would sit there and say, right, well, here's the things I liked and here's the things I want to know about.
So if Tom Cruise is coming on your show tomorrow or next week, I mean, how many hours do you think you put into research?
Well, we were once a week, which was helpful. I think if you did every day would be different, but it would be, it would be a few hours over a few days of doing the homework, then putting that into some sort of structure, knowing full well that, this is the other thing. It's one thing to say, well, we're going to record for 2 hours and then we'll cut it down into what works. Or we'll just let it free flow and see where it takes us and keep it raw, because a lot of podcasts are very much that. It feels like you're eavesdropping on someone else's conversation.
Yeah.
The real art of the interview is you have 6 minutes.
Right.
It's live. So if you get something wrong, that's it. And in that 6 minutes, you have to cover, in some cases, if it's the first time, who this person is, what they do, why they're here, because they're not just popping in because they want to catch up. They've got something they need to promote. But then also try to get the other couple of things that you want to find out about them, plus keep it spontaneous in the hope that something just miraculously happens and everybody goes home happy, with you, where you have gotten something out of them that isn't just going to be the same thing every other interview they do gets. So how do you do that in the space of what on a talk show like mine was a 7-minute spot?
That's rough.
That's where you become not just someone who's having a conversation, but an interviewer.
Well, I think as an interviewee on a big TV show where that there's not much time, you're pretty well aware, keep these answers super short. It's not going to be a deep dive. If you get a gift from God in the form of like something quick and witty to say that'll be the thing that people remember, then hopefully that happens, because nothing about this will be remembered.
Yeah.
So like a couple nights ago, I was going down a YouTube wormhole because I couldn't sleep, and it was Harmony Korine on David Letterman's show.
Right.
And he was on there thrice. Have you ever seen this?
No.
It is the most off the rails interview ever. And I'm not sure there would be many people capable of getting through that 7 minutes, because somehow it got from the beginning to the end. It's so fucked up. And there's 3 of them. And what happened on the 4th one, he was supposed to be a 4th interview, and Harmony got kicked off the set. He was on drugs at the time. The reason he got kicked off only got revealed recently. David Letterman knocked on Meryl Streep's door to see if she was, greet her for the show. She wasn't there, and he saw Harmony going through her purse.
Oh, God.
And he kicked her out.
Wow.
The 3 interviews that lead up to that, it makes sense.
It makes sense.
And that's how far it went. And I remember reading that David Letterman said, in order to be a good interviewer, you have to be good at listening.
Absolutely.
And that this whole spate of new talk show hosts that were coming up at the time, sometime, in the 90s, he estimated that most of them didn't seem to be able to listen.
That is true. I've been on the other end of being interviewed in the States, and often it feels like I'll say it even happens here, where you get asked a question, and even as you start your answer, you can see the person is looking down at what their next question is. They're not really listening, and all they're doing is waiting for you to take a breath, and then they'll jump in with their next question. I would go into every guest that we
Do you notice I'm sitting back now?
But every guest that came on the show, I would always say to them, look, we're 2 grown adults. We know how to have a conversation. That's the real plan here. Now, we've done our research, and we've worked out a list of questions. And the truth is that every guest who comes on then gets told this is what the questions are going to be, so that not everyone is just caught out. Sometimes it's like, there's a funny story you apparently have about that time you scraped your knee when you were 5. We're trying to get that story. So I would always say to them, as much as we have a roadmap of where we want to go, if we go off somewhere else, I'm more than happy to go there.
That's what I'm
so
interested in.
let's just
yeah.
have fun with it. But at the same time, there are sometimes a guest where you start talking and they go off. You see an opportunity to go off on a tangent, and then you go to lead them there, and you see the fear in their eyes of this wasn't on the test.
Interesting. See, I would be suddenly relieved at that point.
Yeah.
The scripted thing would be tougher to me. I'm doing two fun things. We'll drop these like hot potatoes. This is the old days.
Okay.
The first one is I like to get the guests to give all of us creative people listening and giving a shit about creativity. And this could be even someone who's just starting a business. Can you come up quickly with an exercise, and we'll call it New Week's resolution. This week, I resolve, in order to strengthen my creative muscle.
I would say at some point when you are out in the world, and whether that's you're on public transport, whether that's in your car, walking, all those times where I find in the modern world, we put on our noise-canceling headphones and listen to the wonderful Ben Folds podcast.
Of course.
And I know I am somewhat ironically telling you to, and hypocritically telling you to do that right now.
It's a shitty interview.
But turn it off. Turn
this off.
Any other input
right.
into your creative self off.
Okay.
Because I used to fool myself into thinking, oh, you know what? I listen to someone else's podcast and it inspires me to be creative. But then a moment will happen. I'll go, oh yeah, that makes me think of something. And then I keep listening to the rest of the show. And then when I get home, I've completely forgotten what it was. I have a bunch of notes in my phone that make no sense.
So turn it off.
I find I walk the dog every morning for half an hour to an hour. And I don't have anything else coming in except just whatever's happening in my own head. And I have found it has just strengthened the amount of creativity that's coming out because I'm giving it space.
So to make it a specific exercise, when you're in transit, leave the input out. Are you thinking that we're going to pay attention to what other people are saying, or are we listening to what's in our heads?
No, in your own head.
You're just going to be inside.
When you're going for, again, if you're
Space
fortunate
out.
enough to exercise every day, don't put headphones on.
Gotcha.
Listen to your own thoughts.
Okay.
Put something in there that you need to get out. If you get writer's block, I find it's a great thing. Go for a walk. Don't give yourself something else to think about, like a song or a book on an audio book or a podcast. Put it in your head and let it just come and go, like respiratory thing.
Input deprivation, basically. Okay, I like that. That's good. I'm interested that everyone has either an internal or an external thing so far. And some people are more like pay attention to the world around you. And there's the more rare ones that are actually more inward. And so you've fallen into that category of inward.
Yeah.
And I like that. Okay, so in transit, we're gonna turn it off. The input's off.
Yeah. And it might be that I at the moment I'm stumbling on an idea that I need to do and I haven't cracked the code of how to get through this creative issue on it. And it's been a week and I try to put it in my head for when I'm out on my walk. And it doesn't mean you're not going to get distracted by, oh, look at that lovely bird. What a lovely day it is today. But then you can come back to it. For the amount of times you were on the various incarnations of my old show, you would have been on for one of those, here's our 6-7 minutes, here's our rigid plan. We'll have fun with it. I would like to feel we always did. But there was always a very strict time quota that we had to meet before we moved on. But then when I did my LA show, where there was you, who were you on with? Jeff Probst from Survivor and James Vanderbeek.
Yeah.
From Dawson's Creek.
He was awesome.
And so it was just the three of you, and we did an hour of just the four of us shooting the shit.
Right.
But at the same time, we still had worked out, well, you've got a story about this, which links in, like, you're in a band, Jeff had wanted to be in a band, and we still had a little roadmap. But the idea was we could let it breathe a bit more. And that's also the art of the conversation, is to also make sure I have to look at all three of you and make sure everybody's getting equal time. But if someone's on a roll, let them go. But if someone is feeling a little bit left out, got to try to bring them in without ruining this wonderful momentum we have. And in some respects, to really be good at this, you have to be able to do it under the worst of circumstances. So you can say, there's all these podcasts out there.
Yeah.
Which are usually comedians talking to comedians.
Yeah, but there's 1.5 million of them. That means there are people who are like accountants and people who are doing all kinds of other stuff which is in a way why I thought it'd be neat to hear you talk about this stuff, because someone needs to think about this. Like the first one I recorded in person, I threw it second one. The first one was actually great. I don't know how it happened. Second one sucked so bad. And the reason I threw it away is because I stepped on the person. And sometimes I didn't mean to. And I probably am still doing that, but like it would be like, right.
Yeah.
You know, like, and then I realized, okay, I got a whole list of pet peeves that I can't do anymore. Also, like asking them how they're doing and asking a question and welcoming them on the show in the same sentence utterly confuses people. You know?
Also, the worst problem or the biggest trap you can fall into is asking them something. They start telling a great story, and then you go, "Oh yeah, that reminds me of something that happened to me."
Oh no,
which is always
that's a conversation, though, isn't it?
Well, it is.
Like, where's the line?
Well, the line is you let them finish,
right?
and that what you should then do is potentially ask a follow-up question. So if they say, "And that's how I fell over and I hurt my knee," you can sometimes go, "Well, then what happened?" Or, you know, so when your mother found out that you'd climbed that fence you weren't meant to climb, like, and suddenly find a somewhere else to go.
Or you cut them off and say, yeah, it reminds me of the time that I had my knee, and then...
Which mine was even better.
Yeah.
Which could still lead them to go, oh my gosh, and they become engaged in what you're telling them. That makes them think of something else, and there's a wonderful ebb and flow.
But can you see your learning curve? I've seen mine over 8 shows. I can see where I'm getting better. Some things not as good at other things. And I see that it's a skill. I recognize that. I play piano. I have to learn how to, finger things correctly and all that kind of stuff. Like, shit that no one needs to know about. But when was yours, seeing yourself come back on camera and going, oh, I really shouldn't do that anymore? Or do you feel like you didn't have to worry about it? You're pretty natural.
Oh, I feel like I kind of took to it like a duck to water. It was one of those things of, okay, this is what I've been looking for. I didn't know what it was, but here it is.
You were looking for you, or looking for the show that you wanted to see?
It was a bit of both. It was, what's the outlet? And I did enjoy watching the American talk shows like Letterman in particular we got in Australia. But sometimes, it'd be a Newt Gingrich joke, and I'd be like, I don't know who that is. I get the intent behind it.
I wish I didn't.
But it's much worse now, isn't it? And so I always thought it'd be nice to have a show like that here that speaks to my country and our tone. So I set about, really, my brief was usually to make the show that I would want to watch.
Good.
Which was also a lot of the reason why I said no to other things, just to not say that they were bad ideas, but it's just like, that's not for me.
When you say no to things, is that prior to?
Yeah. Well, even when we finished, I did my first year, and we finished our season, and then the network said, that's fine, we won't do any more. And they said, say no to the show and all the people who work on it, but we'll keep you. And I said, that's fine. I'll just go do something else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to just stay with nothing to do. And if it's not this show, then I'll just go off and do something else. And they sort of scoffed and said, well, what are you going to do? I said, and I meant it, when you're young and a bit
I'm going to bury you, bitch.
No, it was more, I said, look, I'll go back to doing stand-up.
Yeah.
Because what I couldn't do before was put my name on a poster and have people turn up.
Yep.
Now I can. Like, I can do a solo show. I've just done, a series, a season of television that's more than anyone else I know. No one else I know has done that. So I'm really happy to take that and the profile that you have given me, which I'm very grateful for,
right.
And I'll go and do something else. So it only took another 6 months, and then another network came knocking and said, hey, we'll take the show.
And that was 10
Yeah,
this time.
And then that was 10 years with them.
I mean, the problem is that we've got 2 minutes left, And I still don't know about this duck. Please do tell. Why does anyone think that a duck doesn't
I don't know.
reverberate? Of course it does.
It would have to.
Of course it does. That's ridiculous.
So then how does it come about? Who's the person who starts the myth?
I know the answer.
Which is?
Well, I've never heard of this before, but I mean, here's my theory.
I would love to hear it.
Well, they're in environments normally where there are no surfaces from which to reverberate or echo off of. So if they're on a pond, they're not next to reflective walls. They're in what we would call a lot of diffusion and dispersion.
Right. Or they just have good baffling
Totally.
Like there's a duck in here right now and no one can hear it.
That's right. I mean, ducks make sure that they're born into skyline diffusion and a lot of like bass traps. Like you never hear ducks that they don't really emit sounds under 60 hertz.
That is a fact.
Yeah.
That is
now
a
we know
scientific
that.
fact.
Yeah. But that's funny that people sit around long enough to think about, a duck doesn't.
Think about the last time you heard a duck quack and it echoed. Think about that, man. This sounds like a stoner conversation that somehow made it into the mainstream. Everyone just went, yeah, you're right. They don't. I've never heard a duck echo. It's like, wait a minute. It's like I'm fascinated with the idea. I think I'm going to write a routine about it. That daytime ghosts. Like why firstly,
right.
Ghosts only ever seem to want to haunt people at night.
That's right.
And secondly, why are they always people? Like, yeah, let's say a duck has a heart attack on the lake. Is there a ghost duck? Can you go down? Like people say, oh, don't go down. Don't throw bread down at that lake. That lake is haunted. You don't hear that.
Well, and they always use all that echo on the ghost voices. So you can't do that with a duck. It won't even show up.
Well, maybe that's how they get their echo because every ghost has to talk like this. So that's why the duck would be quack. And then it just travels farther.
It doesn't reverberate, though, and that's the thing. It's a scientific fact. Give me a bar of something to make a song on with your video with it. Like, for instance, if I picked up my phone, you don't have to be a musician at all. Like, let's say I interviewed Dr. Fauci, which I did not. He might go, wear a mask. And that'd be it. I'd make a song out of that, right? But yeah, so you just give me a couple bars and that'll be our theme song for today. It'll be one that you and I wrote. I'll take whatever you do in alternative music. If you can quack like a duck and don't give a shit. We're all good. Thanks for making time in the day to teach a little fella how to do this. This is awesome.
I think you'll be okay. Good luck with it, young sir.
Thank you.
Hey Ben, it's Rove. I'm in the best room in my house for an echo, which is the bathroom, of course, to prove that ducks, quacks do echo, as we talked about on the show. And how do I know I'm going to prove that? Because I am that duck. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Quack, quack, quack. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. 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 Ducks, quacks, do echo. As we talked about on the show. Ducks, quacks, do echo. As we talked about on the show. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. I'm in the best room in my house for an echo, which is the bathroom, of course.
Hi, if you're enjoying listening to Lightning Bugs, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot.